Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, those who are far away. My name is Farrukh Siddiqui. I'm based out of Dubai. I'm a founding partner with Emerging Capital Management Partners. We are a small corporate advisory boutique firm. Uh, Today, we are actually going with a very important session which talks about uh, various corridors which are becoming very important for the kingdom. And we will also talk about the development we are witnessing in the kingdom. We have a very diverse panelist in this session. We have a couple of bankers. We have someone who runs the commodity business and very keen to learn and do business in the kingdom. And we have someone who will also shed some light on the recovery and the legal aspect and the changes we are seeing in the kingdom in that space. Before I go further, I just wanted to have a quick introduction with my panel members, and I would start and request Yusuf if you could just say a few words about yourself, experience, and where you're coming from.
Thank you very much, Farrukh. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. So my name is Yusuf Ali Khan. I look after the trade business for Citi, for Middle East, North Africa, and Pakistan. I've been in the region 7 years, based in Dubai, and with Citi 21 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusuf. Ahmad AlAlawi.
Thank you, Farrukh. My name is Ahmad AlAlawi. I'm with SABB Bank here in Saudi Arabia, handling client origination and advisory. I have been with SABB for the last 16 years.
Thanks a lot, Ahmad. Natalia?
Morning, everyone. My name is Natalia Haas. I'm a managing partner at Mercator Commodities, and we're a commodity trading house, small-size commodity trading house, focusing in ag. Mainly, I am in the business for the past 10 years and 7 of them with Mercator.
Thank you very much, Natalia. Anjum?
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. I'm Anjum Mirza, head of trade finance at Saudi National Bank, a Saudi bank that's been in the kingdom for 68 years. I have experience of 23 years in corporate banking, trade finance, and international banking. Thank you.
Thank you, Anjum. Last and least, Ahmed, in Singapore.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Ahmed Madkour. I'm a director at Recovery Advisors. We support export credit agencies, Exim banks, and exporters in general, recovering their international debt and with remediating outstanding receivables.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much, panel member. I think the idea is to just shed light on various development happening in the kingdom and how do we see banks and corporate are getting ready to take this challenge. I would request people to really listen the expert advice. These guys are very knowledgeable and they have quite decent information about the development in the kingdom. And, let's give them a little time to, build the dialogue, and then we will be happy to have a question and answer session related to this topic. I wanted to start with Yusuf, with you, because you are very close to me. You are here in Dubai. Only member in this panel who is sitting in the same country. Looking at Citibank and the business what you guys have built in the country, and obviously the global footprint you have, I think you are in a best position to give us a little bit view on the corridor, which are becoming a very important topic. And how do you see things like CPAC and petrochemical project? As I see that Citibank contribution to the market is quite a lot, and I'm sure you guys are well prepared looking at the 2030 vision. Just give us a little broader view that how do you guys see this, and how do you see that you can add value to the development?
Thank you very much for the question, Farrukh. So I think you're spot on, right? Citi in Saudi Arabia, we're currently licensed under a Capital Markets Authority or CMA license, right? Which allows us to provide, varying degrees of services, primarily in the financial advisory space for M&A, for acquisitions, as well as for JVs and strategic alliances and privatization of various projects. But you're right. Our relationships and our engagement with the kingdom goes back several decades, and I think the value add that Citi brings to the kingdom is really the global network and our global footprint that we have in terms of connecting our international clients into the Saudi space and connecting our Saudi clients with the rest of the globe. And when we talk about Saudi, no discussion of Saudi is complete without Vision 2030. All right, and Vision 2030 talks about a diversification of the Saudi economy, a reduction in the hydrocarbon dependence, and investment in the public sector across a host of sectors, basically. And in this regard, a bank like Citi would be able to provide those services, be it from an advisory perspective, be it from a debt and equity raising perspective, through various structures, right? And we've had successes in terms of ECA supported financings that we've done in the kingdom, where the kingdom and our clients have been able to access long dated capital. Similarly, over the last 2 years with the whole global pandemic, there has been a disruption in supply chains. So that has led to a greater demand on working capital finance. And one of the areas that Citi has supported, especially our international network clients, has been around supply chain finance, which then indirectly has helped the SME sector in Saudi as well, because a lot of the suppliers based in the kingdom are SMEs, and SMEs have struggled where it's been difficult for them to access capital, especially at rates that would be competitive. So we were able to bring value add there. And finally, I think I would say is around the whole automation and digitization piece. So as governance takes more of a center of plate, sustainability takes more of a center of plate, we've engaged with our clients in the kingdom on automating and digitizing their trade flows as well, to a large extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusuf. I think you have painted a nice picture, looking at the footprint and the business what you have done, and I guess you're right that digitization is definitely a big question and something which the market is looking for, and Saudi clearly need that. I'll move to Ahmad AlAlawi, because you guys are local institution and operating in the market for a very long time, and you have seen a variety of scenarios. Your contribution towards 2030 and the corridor, what we know that becoming very important. How do you see yourself preparing to tackle that? And what are the key areas and key focus market you guys are looking at it?
Yeah, thank you, Farrukh. I will step back a little bit on the vision itself. Then I will go back what SABB is doing in that cycle. So in 2016, as Yusuf mentioned, that vision was launched by Saudi government, and it was aimed to diversify and grow the Saudi economy itself. And the implementation of the vision was based on the 12 dedicated programs, and these basically to diversify the whole economy from dependency on oil to non-oil dependency. That's really a game changer for the whole market itself, because the government during 2017, 18, and 19, they launched, and 20 and 21, they launched significant major privatization programs aims to unlock the states itself and increasing the private investor within Saudi Arabia, and that's clearly stated in the numbers of investors coming to Saudi Arabia. If you take, I will not speak about 2020 because we had COVID and 2021, which is continuation of the COVID, but I will touch base on the difference between 2018 and 19, which is there was an increase of almost 54% of investor in Saudi Arabia compared to 18. So there was like a significant jump. And this is pushed by the actual aim from the government itself to push the Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia. And most of the economists on the globe, they see the changes on this basically vision itself. That's basically will give a larger localization of value chain involving both local and international players within Saudi Arabia. And that's supported by basically the location of Saudi Arabia. It's connecting the three continents of Asia, Europe, and Africa. So that's basically will add to the basically supply chain within these countries. So if you look to the vision, for example, on the supply chain between countries, you'll see countries like China, US, GCC, MENAT, and some of the Asian countries. If you look to China, for example, the target for China is to be the first importer from Saudi Arabia and second exporter from Saudi Arabia. So we need to export to them to be second. Now they are third. If you take US, for example, they always been the number one here in Saudi Arabia when it comes to imports. Now there is a shift to China, Asia, Korea, Japan, and all of these countries. GCC will play a big markup there. So GCC countries like UAE, Bahrain, Oman, and Qatar, the collaboration between these countries is increasing significantly, especially between us and UAE. And if you take the corridor of UAE itself between Saudi and UAE, it's a third. Currently, it's the second. It's moving to the third on the Vision 2030, and basically because of the diversification Saudi is planning to do within these sectors. So what SABB is doing on this basically aspect is digitalization is important because it's part of the economy in Saudi Arabia to digitalize the whole trade itself. Now, if you open an LC, it takes you minimum 15 days to go on end to end because you have flow of documentation. A lot of banks, especially here in Saudi Arabia, and since SABB is one of the trade houses here in Saudi Arabia and financial institution, we are trying to digitalize the trade to the longest. So we participated in a lot of digitalization projects within the globe. We did the first basically blockchain transaction here in Saudi Arabia. We have banks who works with us like HSBC, Citi, and others who is joining us basically on these programs globally and locally. So definitely digitalization of these markets will add value to the whole chain itself. So corridors focus, we need to have corridor focus within Saudi Arabia, within these banks, and part of the vision, if you read, it's basically developing of financial institutions. So the financial institution developments cannot happen because unless there is a digitalization to the whole journey of the aspect. We see the government digitalization is going faster than even a private these days because the importance of digitalization for the future and lowering the cost for everybody, including the financial institution here in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, thank you, Ahmad. This is exactly what I was expecting from you, being local. I know you can talk a lot more because there's plenty of things that are happening. But I think it's building very nicely that we're getting into the deep dive of the topic. I'll move on to Natalia. I know, Natalia, you guys are very keen to learn the kingdom, and you also want to expand your business in the country. How do you see the opportunities are coming in front of you, and how do you prepare yourself? What do you see the challenges, and what knowledge you have about the kingdom?
Well, so physically, the closest we've got to Saudi was really UAE. But we've been observing the country, the kingdom, for the past couple of years, and we do sense that change coming. We do sense that opportunity as well, in terms of whatever UAE and sort of Qatar have done, Saudi can do as well. And we really sense that now the kingdom has really embarked on the investors in your hardware, and now they're investing in their software. So the branding, changing the attitudes, changing certain sort of crucial aspects of regulation to allow the trade to really flow. And at the same time, what has really changed in terms of COVID, so here in the West, we're quite, traders are quite comfortable. We're quite, if you've ossified in your sort of banking infrastructure, we're quite comfortable in the regions we live in. But at the same time, we do need to go further to trade. There's many new exciting regions where we have to discover. And we do sense a lot of development around Saudi. So again, as a connecting place, it's located really nicely to connect sort of Asia, Africa, all those regions. And the SMEs in Central Asia, SMEs in Africa are really coming up, and they really have to go somewhere. And what's happened sort of throughout COVID is that the doors are really closed. So previously, if you were to diversify, you could think about opening a subsidiary in Switzerland, you could think about, going to all sorts of places. And now I see that many sort of upcoming good quality clients, good quality traders, which work locally, they realize they need to be closer to home. They need to have sort of larger pool of local people to access somewhere where they have to establish subsidiaries. So there are many developments. And what I sense is that we really need to move towards our clients, because the world has really sort of become more restricted. Diversification is a big issue for everybody. Digitalization as well. And then, Europe is nice and comfortable at the same time as, of course, it's less dynamic, and really have to keep an eye on the new market. So, for us, Saudi is a very exciting place. And I'm here on the panel basically as your potential sort of Western trader, keenly looking at the region to expand the base. And then, of course, the image is changing. I really hope, it goes further into that direction.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very good time, Natalia, because the country is moving heavily on the non-oil stuff, right? So import and export will remain definitely important for that initiative, and re-export is also going to grow. And that's what I wanted to actually ask Anjum, that, we see that Saudi Exim is becoming very, very important for the country. They're supporting heavily on the export part and supporting the local manufacturing. So I wanted to understand a little bit from you, Anjum, on the non-oil export initiative. We know that Saudi have done a huge industrialization. I think if you look at the region, I think what Saudi have done towards non-oil stuff versus other GCC countries, I think Saudi is far ahead. But obviously they are pushing more hard. And then other sector, which I also want you to shed some light, is the tourism one. Saudi has opened up for globe, and I think they're pushing a lot on the tourism side. So give us a little bit more on that. And then, the product which are becoming very, very important, such as SCF, inventory finance, off-balance sheet sort of discussion. You being one of the largest bank after this merger, I think you are clearly one of the largest local bank. So a little bit on that, how do you see that you can help the initiative being a very strong and very large balance sheet?
Thank you, Farrukh. It's a pleasure to be part of this event. And on behalf of SNB, thank JTR to making us part of it. As Saudi National Bank being a platinum sponsor, I think this is testament enough to show our interest in trade finance and how important it is for us, not only from the kingdom's perspective, as a regional player also. Now, as you mentioned, it is Saudi National Bank is the largest bank in Saudi Arabia, as well as second largest among the Middle East from Tier 1 capital perspective. Considering what you just mentioned regarding our non-oil export, I think as our previous colleagues mentioned, Ahmed, and about our Vision 2030. Now, when that was developed, the main idea was that Saudi Arabia predominantly was a consumer-based market. It was a market that imports, dominated everything. On the export side, they were only oil and oil-related products. And that diversity had to be made so that with a reduction of dependencies on hydrocarbons. And I think in last 1 decade, the amount of effort that was made, especially in last 5 years, I think that speed has really shown where the kingdom wants to be. Whether it is from multiple efforts of internal productivity, as well as a global player. Some of the efforts that have been made, as you rightly said, Exim Bank is one of the new banks, ECAs in the country, and it's an addition to the previous other entities that are government entities that are doing a lot for the development of exports. as well as making Saudi as a major player in the region amongst these three continents where it sits like a hub. As far as that is concerned, I think if you notice, the Vision 30 had a $1 trillion target for 2030. From a current 200 billion, that's quite ambitious. But within ambition, I think there are efforts that are made. And Exim Bank is one of the production of that, certainly. And after that, I think the multiple government entities like NEDLIB, SIDF, Saudi Development Fund, all these are, collectively making those efforts. While you penetrate, because the diversity and the changes in the global requirements are changing, and especially in COVID, there was a big effect on the supply chain. And in that supply chain, multiple suppliers, there was a lot of concentration towards China, if you noticed. And now, a lot of corporates are changing their methodology. The just-in-time concept of keeping your inventory and low, that was out of the window last year. Banks had to come into play and provide those supply chain facilitation from multiple sources. So once your sourcing changes, and that is where the banks need to be very quick on adopting and being a little visionary of what can come and what is required. I think in Saudi, a lot of banks try to adopt and provide those opportunities, because if you go to non-oil, there are traditional markets for oil. The Saudi is already exploring non-traditional market for oil still, but for the non-oil, there'll be a lot of global market available. So Africa is one of the untapped market. I think a lot of development from the Exim Bank as well as other banks and government entities are to promote Saudi exports. And one of the effort was something called Saudi brand. That is another initiative that has been taken in the kingdom, and they want to promote that. So that will create a hub for Saudi Arabia sitting between Africa, Asia, and Europe. Creating a re-export zone is also another very important initiative that needs to be done over here. And multiple efforts are being made to make re-exporting export zone for manufacturing, and bring the manufacturing and create a diversification in the GDP. Apart from how, like Natalia was mentioning, how multinational looks at Saudi Arabia. As I mentioned, it used to be a consumer. We still want to make that a consumer hub, but the Saudi banks like SNB has made sure that it has joined hands with multiple suppliers and banks across the globe to accommodate this trade flow between multiple continents. So whether it's import or export, now turnaround time is very crucial, and that's where the digitalization comes in. With the digitalization efforts, Saudi National Bank has also tried to accommodate that, and not only be that, but try to be the leader in the kingdom and the region. And we need to have digital availability for multiple clients, whether they're in the kingdom or outside, and processes that need to be reduced in turnaround time. And for that particular reason, I think most of what is coming from fintechs, but banks have partnered with multiple fintechs on that level also. And I think quite a few regional banks are keeping pace with any new development in the Western region. And in fact, there's an amazing sandbox and initiative available in Saudi Arabia, where new technological advances are also being promoted for the local technology and local companies that want to promote their products abroad. So I think that kind of sums everything up. And meeting as far as Exim Bank and penetration in the international market is concerned, I think multiple of such efforts will be required. And Saudi National Bank has been doing introducing new products also, and entering into the supply chain finance area also.
Good. Thank you very much, Anjum. I think you have touched a couple of points. Africa obviously is an important region, and we always see a natural growth when you are in this region, that this is the next and easiest one, and a lot of trade complement between Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa. And while you guys are talking, while we are having a discussion, I keep seeing a lot of observation and question coming up from the participant, which is a great news. Good. So I think I'll move to Ahmed in Singapore. And I know the contribution, what you guys are doing in terms of facilitating all what we have discussed. I mean, legal has been always, and recovery is always a very important topic. And I know that there are quite new initiatives the government have taken to ease that challenge. And obviously companies like yourself, who are expert in that field, are contributing to that, giving a lot of comfort to the lenders and also corporate, bringing a lot of new discipline. Give us a little idea about, how do you see, and I know you guys have established a setup in the kingdom that had a lot of value. So give us a little bit your deep insight that, how do you see, and how do you see that banks are becoming more comfortable when it comes to, restructuring, losses, how do you manage, and overall legal aspect?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you, Farrukh. Indeed, we are basically at the tail end of finance, or we're at the point where the tire touches the asphalt with recoveries and restructuring, remediation, and so on. What we have seen over the past 3, I'm tempted to say maybe even 5 years in Saudi Arabia is short of being described as a miracle. I mean, Saudi Arabia's legal system, in terms of effectiveness, has gone from 0 to 100 in a flash. And as we all know, a loan or a facility is only as good as its recoverability or enforcement. Before the recent changes, we've always struggled with Saudi Arabia. Lengthy procedures, unpredictable outcomes, and so on. But recent changes really, it was a fundamental overhaul of the legal system. And they'll only talk about 3 game changers that are enough for any lender or any ECA covering credit on Saudi importers. The first game changer is the collateralization law. Before that law, it wasn't possible to, or it was difficult, I should say, to secure credit based on collateral. Retention of title, for example, which is basically plain vanilla in a lot of trade finance, wasn't even available in Saudi Arabia. Now that changed, and you have a collateral registry. So a lender can see and can be comfortable to see that their collateral is registered in that registry, and they know that if their borrower goes bankrupt, then they have at least some asset they can enforce. The second game changer is the mediation law. Saudi Arabia is amongst the first members of the Singapore Convention on International Mediation. So now, during remediation and settlement negotiations, we don't even need to go to court anymore. We can just register a mediated settlement, collateralize the debt, and off we go. Then we save years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawyer fees and whatnot in order to secure a credit and have an enforceable mediated settlement. And the final one, that's the most important change, is the commercial courts regulation. This is fundamentally an overhaul of the entire Saudi Arabian commercial law system. Now we do, and we have tested that, we do get verdicts in as little as 3 months. Everything is electronic. The filings, the hearings, the arguments is all submitted online. Our colleagues don't even have to physically go to court anymore. So it's quite an impressive change. So we're happy with that change. And ultimately, with the costs of enforcement, which is really what it's all about, with the cost of enforcement being reduced because of this increases in effectiveness, lenders, guarantors, and so on are, of course, are going to be more open to do business with Saudi Arabia. So that is regarding the fruits of the benefits from developing the Saudi legal system. So that is one angle that I mentioned. The other angle is working with Saudi exporters or helping Saudi exporters recover their receivables from abroad. And if you were to ask me maybe 3 or 4 years ago whether we would have even imagined that we would be working with Saudi export development, it wasn't even on a radar. It wasn't something that we ever conceived. But one of the reasons why we decided recently to set up an office in Saudi Arabia is to help Saudi exporters and lenders, of course, and hopefully develop relationships with Saudi Exim, is to help them recover their receivables or provide them with information during underwriting, especially in faraway countries. And we're also focused on the corridor that Ahmad AlAlawi mentioned. That's the Asia corridor. And that's why I'm stranded out here in Singapore. We are setting up other offices. We have our Seoul offices already set up. We have an office in Manila that's set up, and we're planning an office in Shenzhen, China. And that's basically to help amongst, of course, other exporters, but Saudi exporters too, to help them secure their credit or credit that is extended to buyers in this region.
Thank you, Ahmed. I think it's very helpful to understand that there are massive changes being done, and these are all positive changes. And I fully agree that 3-4 years ago, I guess international bank especially would always have look at this thing kind of negatively, versus the local bank being on ground would always look at things differently. But I think the platform has to be same whether you are international or local. Lender is lender. And I think when the legal system take a positive shift, I guess it helps everyone and it create a very healthy competition. And the new product which you just highlighted and new jurisdiction where you guys are establishing yourself, I think it will help. When you look at the cross-border kind of activity, and obviously corridor is a main topic. Good. So we'll come back to you, Ahmed, and talk to you more on that front. So I would just quickly go back to Ahmad AlAlawi, asking a very quick one in terms of knowing that Saudi is very large population, especially the young population. Ahmad, the retail sector and consumer market is a very large, and I think international suppliers would be definitely try to take the advantage of that. Do you expect to see this grow as we get closer to Vision 2030? And how do you see that supply chain finance opportunities will emerge maybe throughout GCC, Africa, and beyond?
Thank you, Farrukh. This is a very good question, to be so frank. With the investments and companies setting in Saudi Arabia, there will be a change in the habits and dealing with others, especially nearby countries. There is a lot of companies are setting in Saudi Arabia, and the reason is government is pushing them to be in Saudi Arabia. That's why they relax a lot of things. Ahmed already touched base in the legal aspect. They relaxed more majority in things when it comes to creating a company in Saudi Arabia. In the old days, I remember when I used to be a corporate banker, a company will come and put the capital and will spend 2 to 3 months to get their license. Now they can go to Sajia, which is the Saudi investment company, and they just do it in less than 1 day. With the capital is less than 100 riyals. So there is a lot of changes and relaxing on all of these aspects, and this is a major enabler, to be so frank, in Saudi Arabia. The second enablers in Saudi Arabia is the digital aspect of the infrastructure itself. If you take Saudi Arabia on the internet speed, or basically moving to 5G, we used to be a very low base, and suddenly, as I remember, the Minister of Telecommunication went to His Highness, Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, and he said, we need to go to 5G, but there is one minister who is stopping that. He says, whose minister is stopping that? He says, you, because you are the defense minister and you need to go and change that. So technically, he immediately put a committee and changed the whole aspect. That shows you the commitment of the government itself to promote the investor, to promote the enablers for the investment in Saudi Arabia. And that's why you see a lot of changes. A lot of companies trying to set up their companies in Saudi Arabia. In addition to that, there is a push from the government to all regional companies to have their regional offices in Saudi Arabia in order to take more business from Saudi. Saudi by far is the largest economy, and I think Anjum touched base in that side when it comes to the Saudi economy faces other GCC countries or MENAT countries. So Saudi by far is the largest, and they're trying to diversify these changes. So export and the supply chain will play a big role in that side. So you see export going to Iraq, export going to Egypt, export going to Sudan nowadays after the lifting of sanctions. You see them with Algeria, Tunisia. And if you follow the export numbers, for example, set by central bank or issued by central bank, there is a significant growth in these markets. Companies are increasing their basically exports. Let me give you an example on some of the dairy companies or basically companies in food sector, for example. They used to not thinking about exporting these basically their end product because of the subsidy here in Saudi Arabia. Now, after removing the subsidy and they realize that there is an untapped market within the region. You see them now in UAE, you see them in Oman, you see them in Qatar, you see them in Iraq, you see them in Egypt. You see factories even basically established in these, basically in Saudi Arabia just to create that. So let's take another tab of it. And the supply chain is medical companies. You see a lot of medical companies are trying to come to Saudi Arabia. And I attended a couple of weeks ago a seminar in US with the US hospitals thinking about Saudi as a market. So if thinking about that, you'll see companies like Pfizer and others set up their factories here in Saudi Arabia, and that's another thing. So you will have exports even for in the city area, and support for SME is growing significantly, which it's part of the vision itself. So one of the pillars is to support that sector because it's enabler. If you look to Germany and UK, they have been successful. Basically on these two sectors, and it's a major drive for the economy itself. So Saudi is focusing on these sectors, and that will create the supply chain benefit for everybody within Saudi and within the region itself. So I hope that's continue because banks like ourselves here in Saudi Arabia will definitely work on that side and assist all of these companies when it comes to supply chain and all of these products which can create an added value for the market itself.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you very much. I think it touched a lot of things, and we will continue this dialogue. I will pick up some of the stuff from Anjum. You know, he must have few thoughts on few other areas. But I just want to quickly go to Natalia. And Natalia, if you can just touch base on, you know, the financing structures, what generally you see in Switzerland being a commodity hub, and the interest from the banks in the kingdom. I know, you know, when we look at a market close to Saudi, which is Dubai, and they have done, you know, quite decent job because they've been in business for a very long time on the commodity space, and a lot of commodity companies have done their setup here. How much flexibility you see from the banks? Do they really understand? One, do you see that the financing structure / pricing, you know, generally we see out of Switzerland or other European countries, do you see something similar to happen here? And do you see some shift on that front?
Well, first of all, we're talking about trade finance, which is already, most of the regions wouldn't have access to that. So even within Europe, many large industry players with large bases, huge distribution network, big turnover, so big players would come to Switzerland because they don't get trade finance in their host country. And I wouldn't name the countries, but even sort of, you know, yeah, even Western Europe wouldn't allow such a broad base of financing. So which sort of Switzerland would. So if we're talking trade finance, we're already in a very sort of, you know, high tier. Europe is back. So you know, the depth of crisis that we've had last year has been sort of tackled. The sort of personal networking, which I think is crucial to new business to develop a new business is back as well here in Switzerland. So yeah, it's for sure. There's, you know, if Middle East or Saudi wants to attract competition in terms of multinationals, it's a big challenge, of course, because again, if you know the right people, it's very easy to business here. Europe is very efficient in terms of in terms of providing finance to traders. But at the same time, again, we are forced to move as well. We're forced to move as well because our partners are growing. In the past couple of years, COVID has really amplified that. But in the past couple of years, the world has become really stratified. So your local players would be really strong locally, but they wouldn't want to venture out too far because they're realizing geopolitically the world is a difficult place to be in. They don't want to make that investment and go to a totally new place. So yeah, again, Middle East and Saudi, the kingdom, especially as the largest country and kind of sort of, I'd say, the biggest potential in the region right now, has that edge to be close, but not, close enough, but not sort of too close. So it does offer a safe environment, but at the same time is not too far. It has the expertise, it has sort of the know-how, and it's quick as well. Because again, to onboard a new company, to onboard a new supplier, to discuss any new business here in Europe, especially when it comes to sort of exotic places, even if you're well connected, it's very difficult. Whereas in Saudi, again, you have much more edge to, much more transparency, much more edge to assess sort of second tier players in sort of more exotic markets. So yeah, no, for sure. We do sense that change. And again, UAE has shown that it's possible to develop trade finance in, from scratch. Just taking the expertise, taking the technology, investing the money, which Saudi has plenty of to work with. The two challenges that I see personally, and again, that's sort of based on my experience in UAE, is the pricing of the cost of money. Because still, if you want to go high, if you want to develop your turnover, if you want to grow into a big trading company, you would view Switzerland or Europe as your base, because it's cheaper. In the end of the day, it's after a certain point, you can use Saudi as a place to grow, but at the same time, your real goal will be still Switzerland. And I don't know if Saudi can change that, but again, if you tackle efficiency, if you tackle the fiscal, the legal issues, of course, it's easier. And the second thing will be, of course, the reliability of access to instruments. So again, it can get quite complex depending on your deals. The LC structure can be complex. Your clients can be, in faraway places. You have to involve third parties, third banks. So again, it does require a certain degree of experience. It does require a certain degree of openness to build that up. But I think, yeah, I mean, even if, we're talking trade finance, so we're in a good track. And again, many multinationals have to diversify somewhere. And that's in my perception, it's going to come more and more because local players are growing. They're very strong in their local markets. They can offer all sorts of, so in Sub-Saharan Africa, because we still, the panelists focus on that region as well. In Sub-Saharan Africa, you can pretty much sell anything these days because it's growing. There's a lot of demand for everything. And local players try to diversify as well. So to support them, we have to move that step further. And where do we go to is an open decision, really. So, so from my perspective, the things I've heard in this panel really sort of inspired me a lot. So make me, personally consider the region even more. And again, it's a natural place in terms of, high tier infrastructure, in terms of openness. It's a natural place for, for distribution and production for all sorts of products. And of course, there's this build-on effect in terms of trade. Again, if you could certain goods that you could import into Saudi, you would probably trade them further on as well to China or to other regions as well. So it's as Ahmed has mentioned, if you sort of go from 0 to 100 in a very short time, that's a good signal for many companies to diversify into that region.
Good. No, I think. Okay, so quickly. So I think, Natalia, you have touched base a lot of good points. And I can tell you that, the changes, what we are hearing, the size of the balance sheet, which Anjum has talked about, and the legal dynamic, which Ahmed has talked about, and the overall market, what Ahmad AlAlawi has talked about. I think these are all very positive signs. And, the challenges which you have highlighted, I can tell you that it's just a matter of time. These things going to go. And it's good that you are looking at this part, and I tell you that things would change, and things are changing towards positive. Yusuf, just quickly on your thoughts on ECA. This is a very important area, looking at various developmental growth on the long-term financing. I know that short-term financing is generally handled very nicely by the local bank, But you being an international bank where you could probably go for 10, 15, 20 years of financing, Saudi Exim is one, ITFC is another one, and then being an American bank, US Exim is obviously your next door partner. How do you see that your bank is looking at those opportunities, and how much possibility we see that you will be participating in that area?
Thank you, Farrukh. And I think you've touched upon a key topic, right? So when we look at financing and we look at Vision 2030 that Ahmad AlAlawi and Anjum talked about, clearly the financing need is massive. So whether you're talking about, a city like Neom, or you're talking about just infrastructure spends, it will require various sources of funding, and ECA is going to be critical to that, just because the size and the tenor enhancement that it provides, as well as the competitive pricing. So, and I think it's going to come across sectors, across ECAs. So it's going to be the OECD ECAs, but it's also going to be the regional DFIs and ECAs. And in that, clearly, when we look at the region here, names like Saudi Exim for flows outside of Saudi is going to be important. But when we talk about investments coming into Saudi, right, it's going to be your OECD ECAs, but also your Sinoshore, for example, is going to play a key role given the Chinese impact. It's going to have, the other Asian ECAs, could be the Koreans, could be the Japanese. They're going to play a critical role here. But I wanted to come back to one point, right? I mean, we've already seen Saudi multilaterals or Saudi-based multilaterals active in the Middle East Africa space. So ICIEC, which is the guarantee arm of the Islamic Development Bank, has been very active across MENA, in Turkey, in Sub-Saharan Africa as well. Similarly, as you see production and global companies move into Saudi as they look to diversify their economy, as production and refurbishment of capital goods takes place, which is then exported out to what Ahmed was saying earlier, into countries like Iraq, like Pakistan, like Egypt and Jordan, that is going to create a specific space for support for Saudi Exim or Saudi Development Bank, basically. And there it will require a strategic partnership with them. And given the sizes, it will mean that, banks like Citi, international banks, will need to work very closely and in coordination with the likes of SNB and SABB to be able to provide a holistic solution across multiple currencies for the benefit of both corporates and the public sector. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much, Yusuf. Anjum, if I could go quickly, I know that we are constrained of time, but it's very important discussion and we don't want to miss any part. Anything which you want to highlight looking at your franchise and your contribution. You have touched another very important point, fintech. And there's a mushroom growth of those entities. And a lot of banks are saying that instead of going on a proprietary setup, why can't we marry with some of the strategic one, which can really bring a lot of value? So do you see in Saudi Arabia, and we have seen in many other countries, that fintech really gel very nicely with the bank because they don't have a balance sheet. You have a balance sheet, you have a reach to the client. And do you see that, stuff like off balance sheet, stuff like inventory finance, where do you need a little bit, connectivity with a fintech or a third party? I mean, do you see inclination from the banks and the understanding of that value?
Thank you. I think it's a very important point regarding how the digital enhancements are coming along in the country. I think they went really fast, and the infrastructure was very important for any development from the banking perspective. And that's why I don't want to forget the effort by Central Bank of Saudi Arabia. Their turnaround time on responding to banks on new initiatives is exemplary also. And I think these are the infrastructure that were put in place, right? So when you start doing a cross-border trade from a different perspective, going into fancy products, which a lot of Saudi bank, including SNB, has started, is like, for example, commodity structured trade, partner with international suppliers. So capture the, and facilitate the local import as well as export. So the corridor has to go both ways. That's the change that I'm seeing. And I think the vision has helped all the banks to be that way. And required these infrastructure and developments were required to accommodate new ideas and strategy for digitalization. Under digitalization, now you have open banking. There are 2 digital banks already licensed in the country, right? They are open banking with fintech options. So whenever there is, and I'm very glad to see that Saudi banks are quite ahead on that. And they're partnering with fintechs on that particular front also. As far as the corridors are concerned, that I think will happen more as soon as banks realize that they need to go outwards also. It has been predominantly an inward eyes. And I think that now the change is that Saudi banks need to have eyes outside. And they need to support the main crux, which is the risk transfer and liquidity from any perspective, whether it's a foreign supplier or a local exporter. So everybody needs that particular comfort from their bankers, that if they export it to, let's say, Western Africa, their risk can be transferred, some other bank can pick that risk up, as well as provide them immediate liquidity. Similarly, inward imports from multinationals outside, they require that. They already have that infrastructure in shape of their ECAs from their countries. But to understand the Saudi risk, I think a Saudi bank would be a much better option to provide those solutions. Now those products are available with the help of central bank and with the help of new development initiatives, relaxation of the litigation processes, which was a very big hurdle, like Ahmed Madkour was mentioning about it. And now I think the product development can also take place, because there were multiple hurdles 5-6 years ago. And as I mentioned, those are the main aspects that are caused the easiness to move forward with the product development, providing solutions to clients locally as well as internationally.
Thank you, Anjum. I think it's all looking very promising. So just a final comment, Ahmed, from your side. Now you see the challenges when you look at the corporate and a bank, and I think there's a lot of positive story from the Central Bank of Saudi side that they are also accepting, these challenges and trying to overcome that. On the legal space, just few final words, Ahmed, from your side. What sort of comfort you can provide to these guys, because your interaction is more towards the regulator and the legal fraternity and the regulation. That what comfort you see and what message you can give to both sides, the corporate and the banking.
Okay, sure. Well, the biggest comfort that I can give to lenders and guarantors covering credit extended to Saudi importers is that the cost of enforcement is literally slashed. The Saudi that we're talking about today is almost a completely different Saudi from the one 5 years ago. The cost collateralization is now extremely easy with a public registry that can be inspected, and enforcement is almost guaranteed. The legal system is very fast and predictable. I'm keeping it very short, Farrukh, because of time. Sorry.
No, absolutely fine. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate your contribution, your thoughts, your views. I know, it's a virtual one. We can't face the audience, but I tell you that the kind of question I keep receiving, we need the whole day to address. And we know that everyone is so excited about this country, Saudi Arabia, and we know that there's a huge opportunity. But I think this dialogue would definitely help people who want to learn and want to understand what are the new development happening, positive development happening in the kingdom. And I think it's an open market, open challenge, make it and break it. You will definitely have a great time in the kingdom. Thank you very much, everyone, and wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.